Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julian Castro.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, let me say that when Mark Updegrove introduces you, you never have to worry that it's not going to be a great introduction. Thank you very much for that, Mark. And more importantly, thank you for the tremendous work that you have done to ensure that we have a first-class library and experience for folks learning about the legacy of LBJ. I'm a visiting fellow, as Mark mentioned, at the LBJ School this academic year. I also have had the privilege of working with Mark as a member of the LBJ Foundation Board of Trustees and have had the chance to see his excellent work for many years now. So thank you for that. I also want to give a shout out to our elected officials who are here. I see, of course, Councilman Renteria and Casar. I know there have been others here as well. I know the mayor took part last night. I wanted to especially commend the city of Austin for passing a paid sick leave ordinance recently that is groundbreaking in the state of Texas. And I hope that other cities will follow suit. We'll be very proud of that. And the truth is that Austin, over the years, when it comes to extending opportunity, has done some great things. When I was HUD Secretary, we took a page from Austin's book because Austin, years ago, had started to ensure that folks living in public housing had the chance to be connected to broadband. We saw what Austin was doing, and we tried to scale that up through something called Connect Home, an initiative that President Obama announced in the summer of 2015 in 28 different communities to ensure that especially low-income families with children living in public housing could get access to broadband so that kids could do their homework, so that parents who are trying to go back to school could get their work done, so that folks could apply to jobs, so that people could successfully compete in the 21st century global economy. I also had the privilege of attending the celebration when Austin reached functional zero on veteran homelessness. And that was due to the work of so many people in this room who were committed to making sure that not a single person is homeless in this city. And I know that that work with veterans and others very much continues. And y'all deserve a great round of applause for your efforts in helping to make that happen. I also want to, of course, thank Assistant Secretary Farias for being here, for the work that she has done over the years and the work that she does now. Having been there at HUD, I know how important that work is. And thank you for being here as well. In your home state, I know that you're no stranger, and we look forward to good things in the years to come as well. Thank you, Secretary Farias. So, as Mark and others have remarked, the Fair Housing Act was born in a time of enormous turmoil. In fact, in one of the darkest times for this country in its 20th century. The assassination of MLK Jr. on April 4th, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy on June 4th, and his death on June 6th, with urban unrest in cities across the United States, the announcement on March 30th by President Johnson that he would not seek re-election, the war in Vietnam that was still raging on. America in 1968, as many have said, although I didn't have the privilege of living through that time, felt like it was coming apart. People were at odds. There was tremendous division in our country. At the same time, through the work of fair housing advocates, Martin Luther King Jr. and his followers, legislators, policymakers, and President Johnson, the seeds were planted that would forever change the trajectory of so many American families in this country for generations to come. I think of the folks who came before the Fair Housing Act. All of those mothers and fathers that worked hard and may have shown up at the doorstep of a landlord to try and rent an apartment or to buy a home, only to get rejected because of what they look like, because of their background, or the accent that they spoke with. All of the dreams that didn't come true, all of the potential that was wasted because our private sector housing market had not been adequately regulated. And I think, though, over these last 50 years of the tremendous difference that it has made, of the many folks who have been able to live in the community of their choice, in the home of their choice, because it has helped to reduce bias, discrimination in our housing market. The fact is that everywhere today we see the impact of the Fair Housing Act. Every time somebody looks at an apartment listing on the internet or in a newspaper, every time a family goes out to try and buy a home or to get a mortgage, each time that a state or a city or an elected official who has the authority looks at how to invest low-income housing tax credits or CDBG money or home money in so many different ways, the legacy of the Fair Housing Act is not just something in the past, it is very much something in the present. It is helping to ensure equal opportunity in our housing market. The truth is, though, that discrimination still exists. Discrimination is alive and well in our housing market today. This is not just something that is relevant to 1968 or the past 50 years. It's something that we must recognize on this occasion, today, and that I know you know as advocates is still very much needed. Studies continue to show that people of color are at least 10% more likely to be treated differently when they go and try and rent an apartment or buy a home. And even the new technologies that we have in place for accommodations, like Airbnb, have shown themselves susceptible to human bias. Facebook, not too long ago, made advertising available to folks who had a house to rent. It also allowed them to select by race and ethnicity who could see those ads. A clear violation of the spirit, and I believe the letter of the Fair Housing Act. And so the fact is that it's not enough for us to talk about the yesterday, what was done, but we must do what you are doing, the hard, everyday work of giving life to this law. I'm proud that during the Obama administration, we had an opportunity to move the ball forward. We did that by taking seriously our enforcement authority. We did that by increasing our staff in the Fair Housing Office to ensure that we could work with our local communities to follow through on complaints. We did that by passing rules that expanded in allowable ways the contours of the Fair Housing Act. For example, in 2015, we finally promulgated the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Rule. The Fair Housing Act said that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development had the responsibility to affirmatively further fair housing. The problem was that even though the words were there, the meaning had never been set out. In the mid-1990s, it had been tried in the Clinton administration. and they almost got the rule over the finish line. We were very proud, I was proud, to stand in Chicago in that year of 2015 and to declare that by working with local communities, elected officials throughout the country, and through a rigorous process within HUD, that we had gotten it across that finish line. What it said to communities was that they needed to get more serious about ensuring equal opportunity in housing, no matter where they were. That if they take federal money, that they had this responsibility. It promised in the years to come to ensure that the Fair Housing Act would continue to have significance in the law. Not only did we do affirmatively furthering fair housing, but we also promulgated what are called small area fair market rents to granularize how we look at allocating housing choice voucher money. After groundbreaking research came out by Rochetti and his colleagues in 2015 that suggested significant benefits to families who were able to grow up in high opportunity areas, we wanted to ensure that we could strike that balance between allowing choice for folks either to stay where they are or also to get into areas of higher opportunity. And through small area fair market rents, we found a compelling way to do that without greater resources. We also did what we could to ensure that every community possible would come under the protection of the Fair Housing Act. I'm particularly proud that during our time we passed or promulgated the Equal Access Rule, bringing the LGBTQ community more firmly under the Act to ensure that whether someone is seeking shelter or trying to buy an apartment, that they're just as strongly protected as other individuals under the law. During that time, we also saw progress outside of the administration in the Supreme Court. Many of y'all will remember that because of a Texas case out of North Texas, the Inclusive Communities case, the Supreme Court ruled that we could still apply the disparate impact standard to fair housing cases. That will be a powerful tool in the years to come to ensure that we can root out discrimination wherever it is and wherever it's practiced. My hope is that in those years to come, we'll see several things at both the federal level and the local level. First of all, at the federal level, I hope that there will be robust support for fair housing. I know that Assistant Secretary Farias has a track record of fighting the good fight in places like Crystal City. And I also know that there are a tremendous number of dedicated career professionals in Washington, D.C. and across the country, as well as an army of fair housing advocates that are committed to ensuring that there's robust enforcement and support for the Fair Housing Act. I also hope that AFFH will be given life, that it will continue to grow and make a difference in ensuring equal opportunity in our country. I hope that that's true in Washington, D.C. I'm encouraged by the words of the Assistant Secretary, and also true in cities that fundamentally agree with that approach. Some housing authorities, for instance, have said that they will pursue AFFH along with their local communities earnestly, robustly, and submit the kind of plans that all of us can be proud of. I hope that in cities like Austin, in conjunction with a federal partnership, those plans will be meaningful, will be more than something that goes on the proverbial shelf, but will help ensure that so many more families can pursue their dreams. I also hope that we'll get better about striking the balance that needs to be struck between investing in distressed communities and investing in choice to move to higher opportunity areas. This is one of the places where Austin comes in as a local community. In many ways, Austin is the ideal American city. Fast-growing, diverse, steeped in 21st century industries. In other ways, though, that masks, as many of y'all know, so many of the deeper challenges that beset this city. A history of segregation, both racial and economic. Tremendous displacement and gentrification that has happened, especially in places like East Austin. The need, as the mayor and the council have seen, to develop a new code that can adequately address the need for more affordable housing in this community. My hope is that through all of this, Austin will be an exemplar of communities that connect the dots of economic opportunity and quality of life. To understand that it's not just enough to focus on housing, but we have to do that in conjunction with a focus on jobs and economic development and transportation and the environment and all of those things that go into improving quality of life. At the same time, I hope that this city will work regionally. The fact is that Austin is one of the fastest growing communities in the United States. But the county and the metro region are growing even more quickly. There's an inertia against working with neighbors. As former mayor of San Antonio, I know that in our big cities, we often see the suburbs around us as competitors for the next economic development project or significant investment. And that has sometimes hampered us from being able to work collaboratively, whether on economic development or transportation or housing opportunity. From the perspective of the suburbs, they don't think of themselves as places that need an affordable housing plan. So many suburbs that are seeing more and more families of need, families of modest means at their doorstep, and homelessness on their streets are in denial. They don't have a history of grappling with these challenges, and so oftentimes they want to push those responsibilities off to the big city. When it comes to affordable housing, they think they'll let Austin or let San Antonio or let Chicago or whatever city it is handle it. The truth is that that's not good enough anymore. That every suburb, as well as the big city, has a responsibility to tackle these issues to provide greater affordable housing opportunity. And I hope that Austin will be part of a collaborative effort to make that more possible here in Central Texas. And so today, as we celebrate 50 years of such a significant piece of legislation, I wanted to come here and, first of all, to offer a big thank you. During my time at HUD, I had the chance to visit 100 different communities in 39 states to see the acute need there is for affordable housing, to understand that we're living in a time when there's a rental affordability crisis in cities like Austin and smaller cities as well across our country, but also to gain a magnificent appreciation for the work of our partner advocates, folks who work in the nonprofit, the public, and the private sector to truly make the promise of housing opportunity possible. Whether they're lenders who see excited families trying to get that first mortgage, every day, or governmental agencies working to put all of those pieces together, connect those dots that I talked about to lift up quality of life. Or you, the advocates that ensure that the system works as it should, that in many ways are our conscience, the ones who don't give up, the ones who remind us how it should be, how it has to be, the ones who represent everybody, even the voices that sometimes in politics don't want to be heard. I wanted to come and say thank you, gracias, for the work that you do. And I came here today also to challenge you. Because as impactful as the Fair Housing Act has been over the last 50 years, it's also true that at this moment, in 2018, we know that something has been unleashed in our country. We see a growth of division, of backlash, of the picking on vulnerable communities out there, the very communities that the Fair Housing Act was passed to protect. And you, in a very real way, are our frontline force to make sure that the American dream stays real for every single American, no matter the color of their skin, or their last name, or how long they lived in our country, whether they're a man or woman, or their sexual orientation. It's not going to happen without your effort. So gracias, and keep on going. Thank you very much.